You're listening to the In the Money Players Podcast. Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players Podcast. This is show number 2. It is Friday, December 28th as we record this. I am Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you, but not in the Brooklyn bunker today, out at my father's office. And no, I'm not talking about the hamburger joint in Santa Monica or wherever that is. I am talking about the actual office where my father used to work, out in the house where I grew up on Port Washington, Long Island, out here for the holidays. We've got a fun show for you today, truncated show. It is the holidays. We're taking it a little bit easy on ourselves. We want to check in with you all and do about 30 minutes talking mainly about opening day at Santa Anita and having a little bit of fun. And then we will be back early next week with a more serious show where we go in depth about the Eclipse Awards. But today, we're not going to do anything all that serious. And joining me by remote, a man who's never all that serious. He is back from California, only barely, it sounds like, back on the planet Texas. He's the people's champion, Jonathan Kinchin. JK, how are you today?
I'm back. I'm sitting on my couch here in Austin. If I'm not screaming, it's because my 7-year-old who was a trooper yesterday when we were traveling is still sleeping. So I'm trying to keep him getting some more rest so that he doesn't wake up like a furious tornado and terrorize us all.
We all know how that goes, JK, and I was going to accuse you of a low-energy performance on today's show, but that explanation gets you right off the hook. You know just how to make it work. Speaking of children and the holidays, have you ever played the game Operation, JK?
I have played the game. It used to make me nervous when I was a kid.
Have you played it with Austin in the last few years?
No, I don't think I have, actually.
I was just bringing it up because whoever invented the Charlie horse in the game of Operation is on my list. I'm going to start, like Nixon and my buddy Chris Jericho start keeping a list. And the guy who invented the Charlie horse in Operation is on my list. I don't think it's possible to get the darn thing out of there, JK, without making the machine buzz. And it's making me a little crazy. It's to the point where I'm ready to play it when Perrin isn't there, just so I can see if I could do it under quiet and normal circumstances. So I can relate to you in terms of some of the frustration it sounds like you've been going through. I do have to bring one other thing up regarding your travel, because you just said something the listeners just need to hear, JK. You know what I'm referring to? You can just repeat it, or do I have to draw it out of you?
I'll let you go.
Okay. So I believe clearly the equipment, very, very fortunate. We've got our own setup now. Our friend DJ Unstable helped me get it set up, but it's clearly not working because what it sounded like you just said was that you were supposed to go to England, but you weren't going to go to England unless you could get first class. Now, I know, in the past you've had the private plane. At some point you had to sell it due to a bad weekend at the track. These things happen. But I mean, this might be the snobbiest, firstest worldest problem that we've ever discussed on the In the Money Players podcast or the show that preceded it.
This is going to be a longer explanation than necessary. But for people who don't know, my mom retired from American Airlines, and I'm her registered companion, so I get to fly for free.
Note to self, future bingo square idea, I fly for free.
It's how I'm always jumping from place to place because it's free at standby, though. So although there's a lot of perks to it, I can, if first class is available, I'll get first class at no additional charge. But there's also days like yesterday where I got to the airport at 9 a.m. and I did not walk into my house in Austin until 11:45 at night.
Ugh.
So
for a couple of hour flight, really.
So those are the negatives that come with it. So because those negatives come with it, I do demand some things at certain times. I don't have to go to London. So if I'm not going to get first class, then I'll wait to go another time where I will, because to be honest, it's why going to London for 4 days makes sense if you can get first, because you can sleep on the way there, sleep on the way back. You don't really lose anything. So that's the reason for my snobby remark.
All right, that's fair. And I assume an MK show is on the agenda if you get over there. I'm sure it's sold out, but we do have a lot of English listeners, a lot of MK fans listen. So I was just curious which of the didn't you say he's playing all around the country on New Year's Eve?
Yeah, he plays London, New Year's Eve night at 12:30, I think, or no, like 11:30. So he plays through, the ball dropping or whatever. And then he is out. I'm not going with him on this, but he's out the back door to I don't know exactly what airport to fly to literally take a private jet from London to Manchester, and he plays at 3:30 in the morning there. And then, but I'm skipping that one.
That's pretty cool. Now, that would be fun, and to get some legitimate private plane experience. At some point, we're going to do this show from a private plane. It's a dream of mine that will have to come true. Hey, one other little bit of business before we start talking about racing. The numbers from the first show, JK, are in, and they were spectacular. And I just wanted to thank the listeners for sticking with us, even though we weren't on iTunes. We barely missed a blip. Now, I don't mean to be unappreciative of the previous show's sponsor, because like we said, we give them a lot of credit for help getting us up and running and believing in us at the beginning. But it's pretty clear to me that assessment we made that we were ready to fly on our own is absolutely true. We haven't missed a beat. And I just want to thank the listeners so much for that. Makes life so much easier next week when we actually get in a non-holiday week and it's time to go out and start wrangling some sponsors to be able to show that we haven't missed a thing. Were you surprised at all to hear how strong the numbers were?
Surprised might not be the right word. I was relieved. I kind of expected it. I mean, like we said before, we're fortunate enough to get a lot of good feedback. So I felt like people like and listen to the show. I guess my biggest thing is that we pretty much ripped away every way that people normally listened. So the numbers that we got, people had to go out of their way, and that was probably the part I was the most thankful for and impressed with.
And that's why the thanks to the listeners are in order. It wasn't as simple as, it pops up in your feed and you have to listen. You had to go out of your way, and we thank you for doing that. Speaking of going out of your way, you did hit Santa Anita for opening day. We're going to talk about some of the specifics of racing. Actually, let's do that. We've done enough bantering among ourselves. Let's start with McKinzie, JK. I saw the tweet you put out about tabbing him as your choice already for the 2019 Breeders' Cup Classic. I was a little more in line with the camp who was thinking this was a performance that suggested the 2019 Met Mile winner. How good was McKinzie on this day?
Well, I thought he was really impressive. He circled the field and just, it was all elbows for Mike at that point. Once he kind of went clear, I thought he was really impressive. And for a horse that, in my opinion, it's weird, like why people are like thinking he's like a one-turn horse. I saw some moron. That's right. I said moron who just needs so badly to be acknowledged that he wants to get into it.
I didn't see this. I didn't see the one you're talking about, which I'm feeling bad about. It sounds like it could have some fun here.
No, it's very annoying. He's trying to literally, honestly poking the bear is what it was.
Are you the bear in this analogy?
I'm always the bear. No, speaking of the bear, okay, so let me finish McKinzie, and then I got to tell you about a story I forgot to tell you about.
Good.
And it's going to be great to tell you live. I literally did forget. I thought he was really impressive. And look, he's won two-turn races, big ones. He won the Pennsylvania Derby, ran well. He ran so bad in the Classic. That was not I can't go a mile and a quarter bad performance. That was a something's not right, I didn't run well performance. And it's not like he wasn't involved in a pace that was pretty quick, and it wasn't like the ask of getting him ready for the Classic wasn't a lot anyways. I think with time and maturity and a full campaign and really being able to get some races underneath his belt, I don't see why he can't get a mile and a quarter. So especially at Santa Anita, his home track, so on and so forth. So I think he's probably the most talented horse we have in training. Obviously accelerate, but still, from that point. So I think he was really good. I thought it was really impressive. winning that race against those horses. There are some good horses in that race.
Is Accelerate done after the Pegasus? Is that why you?
I would think so.
Okay.
Maybe I feel bad that I haven't. Actually, I don't have to feel bad about saying that I didn't read the articles in the DRS. I don't.
Fair point.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's there. I'm sure that one of the great writers there has put something together about Accelerate's plan. I just haven't seen it, but I would imagine he'll be done after the Pegasus. What
Right.
more? What more? I mean, he's got a stallion career from that point moving forward, so I would imagine that will be his last race.
The way you phrased that statement about McKinzie and in training, I was assuming that you knew definitively about the other horse, because obviously that would be a strange statement to make if they were both. If you consider Accelerate still in training, that's a trickier statement to make. But you're projecting into the future. You're talking about moving forward, and from that point of view, I absolutely get what you're talking about. I just thought that some horses, it was one of those efforts visually. To be honest, I haven't looked at what the figures came back yet, which I probably should have done before the show. I've been a little disoriented out here. You know how it is when you're traveling and it's the holidays and you're doing relatives things and not maybe as prepared as I should be. But that notwithstanding, the visual impression was such that it was to me a tour de force performance. I don't want to say regardless of what the clock says, but I'm just pretty darn sure it's going to come out well on the clock just because of how well it looked. When you're just you're running in the race and then everybody else is still in that race you were running in and you're running in your own race, it was one of those. And I don't know, it just gave I'm not saying that you are wrong that he couldn't be a major contender for the Classic, but it's just my first thought was, wow, that just looked like a Met Mile type effort, that's why my head went there. Not that I was disagreeing with you, just that I had some thoughts in my head that appeared before that one.
I don't have a problem with him winning both races, right? I mean, he runs in the Pegasus, then they give him some time and give him some time off, and then he shows back up, running in the Met Mile. Then he runs in some of the summer stuff, whether it's the Pacific Classic or if he decides to take the mile on an 8th route and go to Saratoga. There's those options as well. And then he comes back and he can still run in the class. I mean, you could do both.
Yes.
Of those races. I mean, let's remember, like Mind Your Biscuits didn't work out well for him. But he did, he made the double there at least.
Yes, he made it to the gate, looking to the likes of us like he had a strong chance. So that is something. Let's talk about prices. You mentioned about wanting to make this bet. I saw one outlier price of 25-1. I don't know how real it is. If you could get 25-1 McKinzie for the Classic, that's a straight up buy for you?
No, not. I mean, I'd have to say no, because a friend of ours, Ed DeRosa, actually messaged me on Twitter and offered me 25-1. I guess I was hoping for a little bit more wise guy than that. I guess like in my brain, I was thinking there was somewhere where people wouldn't believe in a horse that just won the Malibu is going to win the Classic, and I could get 50-1 because he's obviously had issues and we're like 340 days away from it.
Interesting. See, I thought that was if it was something you were interested in, to me, that would be an excellent price. And I figured the real price would be half of that, which is what it seems like it is looking around to a few other shops and seeing 10s and 12s. So
yeah, it's just a sell for me then. It's a definite sell at 10 and 12.
Gotcha. More in the hold range at 25.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Speaking of buy, sell, hold. Now, we're going to put out a warning here. If you haven't gotten through all 7 seasons of Game of Thrones, you might want to skip over this a little bit. I just don't know how spoilery the conversation is going to go. It might end up not being terribly spoilery. But anyway, if you're like nuts about spoilers and you're not through season 7, hit the little fast forward button 3 or 4 times and see what we're talking about after that. Buy, sell, hold, JK, on who will rule the Iron Throne at the end of Season 8. Currently installed as the favorite just under 3-1. We have Daenerys Targaryen, and then we have a line of contenders in behind her, including Sansa and Jon Stark at 3-1, Bran Stark 6-1, Arya 7-1, the Night King himself at 8-1, Tyrion at 10s, Cersei at 20s, Gendry at 25, along with Jamie, and then Varys as sort of the wise guy contender in there at 75-1. Any fancies looking over that odds board?
I think Danny's a good favorite. I think that Danny's a good favorite.
Is she a little too
John's-
obvious? Is she a little too obvious? Is my only concern there to take such a short price when. Though I guess you could argue the way her arc progressed through last season, maybe it was after season 6 she looked nailed on. She looked long odds on. And they've sort of backed out of that, maybe as a way to bring her in there. So you're probably right. That is the right favorite.
Tough. I think Jon Snow's probably a little wise guyish, a little dressed up maybe. Was loose on the lead last time on a good rail. Yeah, he seems like he should, but I feel like it's probably too obvious. I'm gonna take the 7s on Arya.
Yeah, I like that. I think there's a little bit of value there. Yeah, when you look at the name of the whole thing from the beginning, you have to figure, Song of Ice and Fire. Well, which two characters does that seem to represent? And the fact that it's not, it just now where we sit after 7 seasons, it feels too obvious to me to go Daenerys or to go Jon. And I like where you're going with that. You have a plucky fan favorite character who's been on this amazing journey. I like where you're going. Perhaps
you could Dutch him too. You could bet like you could bet,
three Stark Dutch.
You could probably get an even money return if you take Dany, Jon Snow, and Arya.
The math guys are going to be all over us. All right. Spoiler portion over. If you've been scrubbing through to get past the spoilers, we will not talk about Game of Thrones anymore. But I did say weeks ago we were going to do a Game of Thrones buy, sell, hold, so I had to make sure that we got that in there. How did things work out betting wise for you on opening day at Santa Anita?
Missed the early pick 5 with that horse that Jose rode, the one horse in like the 3rd race. Missed that one. Was lucky enough to hear about the Pipey Maiden in the 5th. Last second, the Chappie came through and gave us some advice there on that one. He was 8-1, so whatever. And then the late pick 5, I missed. What did I miss?
Sadler off Chad Brown.
Yes, I missed Gift Box. Yeah, he cost me the pick 6 too. Gift Box did. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Interesting angle there. If you don't mind. Do you mind my interjecting for a second?
No, of course.
Something that Mike Maloney mentioned to me long ago, sometimes when you see horses move, a couple of horses move from one barn to another, whatever the first horse does, often if the first horse runs above or below what would be expected, it can typically be a pointer that the other horses going that way might follow a similar trajectory, which I just thought was kind of interesting now that we've seen 2 horses go from Brown to Sadler and both run really well. I just thought that was something Mike mentioned during the book. We had no way of squeezing it in the book, but it sort of stuck with me as something I look for because you do see that pattern sometimes with horses. So that was all I had to mention about that, but you go ahead.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. So it was that, but it was also that I believe it was Andy Harrington. One of the workout reports said he was doing okay. The other one said he was doing like C+.
Oh, wow.
So when you have a narrative like that anyways, off Chad Brown, and then you see C+,
Whew.
it's an easy one to try to run away from. And obviously it was a mistake. So,
well, let me ask you that. When you see workout reports contradict each other, how do you determine what to do?
It's just a wash for me. Usually I go with my handicapping. I just consider it a wash and just go with the handicapping, or I'll read them and actually read what the, what the definition was of the work.
The description.
Because sometimes what'll happen in those situations is like, this isn't what happened with Giftbox, but just as an example, Giftbox will work with Accelerate, and Accelerate will dust him, and one guy will give him a C+, but the other guy will grade the work understanding that he was working against the greatest horse in the world right now. And so, you know what I'm saying? Like
on a curve, essentially, it's like grading a test on a curve. And to me, that's what you would have to do.
Right. But from some of the guys, their opinions vary. So you have to kind of read the paragraph about the horse, about the work, which is something that I try to do more than just looking at the grade anymore.
It's
And
tough, man, but because it is so subjective. I mean, Breeders' Cup week, now I'm no expert, but I've spent enough mornings in the company of Sean Clancy watching horses work that I feel like there's a tiny little bit of it's rubbed off by osmosis. I certainly wouldn't put my looks opinion against anybody clocking professionally, but I still have an opinion that I think there is some signal in. And I've seen horses work, to my mind, great, that other clockers had things they were crabbing about. Usually, I don't see little physical things the same way somebody who's trained would ever do. I'm looking at more of a general picture and much more from a betting perspective than anything really in the weeds. Now, at the Breeders' Cup, in that instance, I was right. I'm sure there's plenty of instances where I'm wrong, but it just underlines how it can be very subjective, and it's not crazy, even without the in the company angle, that one person's B plus. I mean, I almost feel like one person's B plus, or at least B, could very easily be somebody else's C. Does that match your experience?
for sure, different opinions give you different. That's why I like to see both, because obviously if you get a double B plus, now that you're everyone agrees the horse is working amazing. But then you can also get the double C is even better, where now there's two different people who said the horse didn't work well. So I like, but it's the same reason that I used, Timeform US and Buyer, Timeform US and other figures. I like to see, I need two opinions, because they are, figures are very scientific. However, there is a dash and a sprinkle of opinion, maybe even a little bit more than that. Maybe
definitely
maybe two parts, it's 2 parts opinion, but a lot of it's science as well. So I want to see both when I can.
To me, it's the data behind figure making. It's a beautiful blend of art and science, whereas workouts, to me, much more in the line of art. Now, what you said there, very interesting to me. It sounds like you find more signal in the negative workout stuff than in the positive workout stuff. Is that accurate?
Yes. I like nothing makes me happier than a horse who's 4, 5, 6 to 1, who has C workouts and you can toss. There's so much value there if those situations work. And obviously there's not value. There's anti-value when Giftbox runs a huge race and beats you.
It's not magic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We always talk about this with successful horse players, successful gamblers of any stripe. It's not magic. It's like being a card counter in a casino. All you're trying to do over time is turn that edge in your favor. Just because you get bit by Giftbox doesn't mean your methodology is wrong or should change. It means it didn't work out that time. You have to evaluate the process. You have to evaluate the decisions. You cannot get too stuck in on the outcome, or you'll just be lost going from thing to thing to thing and be donating money.
Here's when it was magic. In the 5th, the maiden race where Pipey won. Baffert had 2 in there. It was 6 to 5, and then had a half to Plum Pretty, who obviously no one liked, was 16 to 1. Those 2 horses had bad workouts and were out of the super high 5. I think Scalper was 6 to 5 and ran 6th, I believe. So there is magic there when you can find those situations. It doesn't happen too often, obviously, but when you can find them, it does work out well.
Few other things to follow up on. You sent me a text that I was very confused about. You were alive even with the third choice winning the first race. You had a $25 ticket that would have hit if it wasn't for Giftbox?
Oh, that pick 5?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God. How did you come up with that? I get it if you're making a Dutch type play all the way through, but when you have a big price winning, well, not that big, but when you have a third choice winning the first leg who wasn't your top pick, I didn't understand how you could have that big of a combination going forward.
I had Spice Perfection as my second choice. No, third. I had third, but I didn't give Dream Tree very much credit. I kind of faded her a little bit, so it helped.
Yeah, you must have faded her a lot to have that kind of combination going forward. That is wild stuff. All right, you had a story to tell me that you said you haven't told me yet from Santa Anita opening day, and then I heard some gossip I wanted to ask you about. Maybe this is the same thing.
It probably is. I won't tell you the name of the person. And look, TQ and Nate are probably like, God, what is he telling the story for? I've been to Eddie Logan a lot in my life, probably more than 100 times. I've never seen anything like this. It's very classy.
This is the story. This is the story I heard about that I was going to ask you about.
Very classy establishment. However, there is a queen in that establishment. There's one part. There's the boss, and TQ might seem like he's the boss, but he will explain to you very quickly who the boss is.
He defers.
It is Orcadia. Someone, whether it was true or not, was getting a little testy with Orcadia, being a little bit choppy based on the time it took for some food to come or something.
Oh, jeez.
And in the meantime of that happening, a regular of the Eddie Logan made a comment, just a kind of a take it easy comment, and then there was a comment back, and then it turned into like a bar situation where,
gosh,
it was like people were holding each other back. Richard came out from behind.
Punches thrown?
Ish. Like it was one of those. We've all seen it, right? The everyone's holding each other back, and there's some wild arms, but nothing really being accomplished.
Like you at Churchill Downs, JK, when I described it as two dogs on leash barking at each other. Is that what we're dealing with here?
Similar, very similar. But anyways, it was definitely entertaining. That's for sure. Nothing major happened. No chairs got flipped over or anything like that. Just
no drinks thrown in faces.
Just tempers that can flare when a few drinks are probably in the mix.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, it sounds to me pretty straightforward. Like you had some outside person being a jerk and somebody being disrespectful to Orcadia, who works her butt off. She works so hard in there. And I'll tell you what, I would have been full-on team guy defending Orcadia had I been in the mix. I mean, maybe it escalated a little too quickly, but sounds to me from the way you've told the story like there is a right and wrong party in here. Though I guess, keeping tempers under control and having a broader palette of conflict resolution skills, as we say, isn't, as I try to teach Perrin, isn't the worst idea. But I do think that the regular's heart was clearly in the right place, yes?
I do. I think so. But like you said, you probably got to find a different way to accomplish it.
Says you, the guy who gets into skirmishes at Churchill Downs.
It wasn't quite a skirmish. It wasn't quite a skirmish.
I don't know what you want to call it. Any other thoughts from this weekend at Santa Anita?
No. Now that you mentioned it, I do think Spice Perfection ran really well. Good for her as a Calbred winning that grade 1, and River Boyne is pretty good. I'd love to see River Boyne get on a plane next year and run against some of the East Coast types. I mean, I'm not sure that he's good enough, but he's becoming fairly dominant, or at least he's there in every race in California.
It was a performance by River Boyne to me that really did exude class in a way that not all the graded stakes wins in California turf races do. I sound kind of flaky, I think, but do you know what I mean? It didn't seem like everything was going his way, and it just seemed like he found a way to get it done and appear in position at the right time and finish and just look better than the other horses in that race.
Absolutely. He ground it out in that spot. So I thought he ran really well.
All right. So we've talked about the stakes from Santa Anita. We've done a little bit of nonsense. I think in the spirit of going easy on ourselves, we're going to leave it there for this edition of the In the Money Players podcast. We are going to be back sooner rather than later with our Eclipse Awards show. But I want to thank Jonathan Kinchin more than usual. I want to thank all of you for listening and downloading. Keep it up. We're on iTunes. Check us out there. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Hey, I'll tell you what, if you really want to help, leave us a review on iTunes. You'll help us get our numbers back up to where they once were. Very easy to do in this day and age. Helps other people find the show, and we really appreciate it. We will be back on Monday. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.